you look at the playoffs this year, you see a lot of rookies making big impacts, and that will not change in the Super Bowl. I'll talk to Matt Williamson today about the impact of the rookies on the NFL and how it changes the landscape of the league.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you also that you can find a double dose of Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcast each and every day. Whether you watch or listen to those shows, make sure you tap into that location so you do not miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. As always, we want to say hello to the everydayers, and if you're a newcomer, welcome here, and I'll let you know what it's all about. We use the help of local experts, and on Friday, it's always Matt Williamson, former NFL scout, my big brother, or my brother. I don't want to make it sound like you're older than me, Matt, because I don't think so, but that is my brother.
I'm 6'3". I'm a pretty big guy. You know.
Okay, there you go. There you go. I'm 6'3", and I'm 6 feet. So you are a big brother. There you go.
Okay.
Here's what we're going to get on today. Talking about
tell
big
you
guys.
my weight. That's a big number, too.
I know it. Talking about big guys and big roles, Dallas Goedert, the last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl and won, well, not the last time they were in, the last time they won it, Zach Ertz played a big part. I think Zach Goedert, Dallas Goedert, and other people like that are going to have to step up and be big in these roles. Some teams that we expected to be in the game aren't in the playoffs. We talked about the Bills maybe having their window closed last year, and they made it all the way back to the championship game. The 49ers are very, very intriguing, and I know you know them a lot too, Matt, because of the Peacock and Williamson show, hosting that show with Brian Peacock. We'll talk about them and how they can keep their window open and why I already think it started, that they can assure that will happen. And then the rookie impact on the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Let's just pick it up right there. You look at Worthy last week for the Chiefs against the Bills, the teams that didn't take him. And it seemed like Andy Reid went right at them with him and used that little chip that he may have had on his shoulder. And then in the other game, how big have both Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell been for the Eagles? Huge, huge, huge impact from teams that usually can take their rookies and just let them wait. No, these guys have them front and center, Matt, and I think they're going to be a big impact in this game.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with the Eagles. I mean, and I'm going to expand it a little bit too. I mean, the guys the Eagles invested in, whether big or small, this offseason, almost all hit. I mean, everyone on the planet knows Saquon Barkley, obviously. But they got Mekhi Becton, who's a top 10 pick, turn him into a guard, give him to Jeff Stoutland, and turn him into a killer. And then they get Bond, who was misused with the Saints. He's a all-pro, not a Pro Bowler, an all-pro off-the-ball backer. And then the two rookies, the first two picks. I mean, let's not forget how last season ended for the Eagles. I mean, it was a miserable losing streak, terrible situation. They go to Tampa, get wiped out. They hire two new coordinators. It did not end well. And then you hit on all these offseason guys and you hire two new coordinators that are working out. And I looked at that Eagles defense in particular last year and thought the back seven was a disaster. They never invest in safeties and linebackers. And, the other corners besides Slay weren't getting the job done. Well, they corrected that. Boom. That's unbelievable to me. And then the Chiefs, on the other hand, I give them so much credit because they've been looking for an explosive passing game ever since Tyreek Hill left. And frankly, they still haven't found it. They're like the least explosive team in the league, but they're so efficient. I mean, on 3rd and 6, they get 7 every time. 4th and 2, they get 2.5, and you think of Worthy as a Deshaun Jackson, Ted Ginn, downfield dude only. But they're using them behind the line of scrimmage. They're, pitching him the football. They're getting him on stride, on crossers. They're using his speed not only vertically but horizontally because they can't protect. I mean, their tackles can't protect. So they've reinvented themselves. And Mahomes just, I'll play it however you want, coach. Let's go. And it's remarkable.
You just made a very, very good point. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, what am I going to say? Because Matt sounds real, real smart. I got to make sure I come back
I'm
with.
pretty wound up today, Wig. I got some good news here. I'm fired up.
That's right. And then you made a great point. They can't. You ain't got to worry about them beating you on a deep post or a 9 route because they can't protect on the edge, right? And even if Mahomes, even though he's mobile, he gets away. He can't reset and throw the ball that far. I mean, he's got a gun, but he ain't throwing it from Kansas City to St. Louis, right? So what they've decided to do is there's another way you can use that speed. Go in motion. Make alignment, put him in alignment, and then all of a sudden this guy comes across formation, turns and goes the other way on a little bit of an orbit, and all of a sudden these dudes can't keep up with him. Mm-hmm. And that's how Andy Reid has used them and has done well. This is the thing about good GMs and good coaches, and I'm glad you mentioned both teams because they know exactly who they want, what they need, and they know how to get the most out of them. I want to switch gears real quick to the Titans, the team with the number 1 pick in the draft.
Can I throw 2 things at you real quick here, just before we get away from these two? You mentioned that jet in motion. I beg people to pretend like you're an NFL edge defensive end player and you're on the right side and pre-snap, Xavier Worthy, who runs a 4.2, and they used to do it with Tyreek Hill, who's the most terrifying player in the league,
right,
is screaming, not just jogging parallel to the line of scrimmage, but is screaming parallel to the line of scrimmage right at you. That slows down your pass rush a great deal. Like if they hand it to that dude, I'm a pretty good athlete, but I can't run with him, So that slows down the pass rush, even if he doesn't touch the football. And it's just so. And again, the tackles are a problem. The other thing, go ahead. Yeah, please, go ahead.
No,
and then the last thing about the Eagles, everyone talks about, they have this much cap space. This team, went out and got these free agents, but they're always at the top of the league in cash spending. Money out of the owner's pocket. He doesn't care. He wants to win, and that's a lot of freedom for a GM.
Now, when you do that, you add that to the fact that they hit in the draft all the time.
Right.
It really, really, really makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people can look at them. And I know everybody thinks it's just all about the quarterback, but these teams, these organizations have been like this for a long, long time. So even without a quarterback, you have the responsibility to build your team. Some people don't believe you go get a quarterback until you can protect them. Some other people believe, well, if the guy is not a legit, when you're using the number 1 pick on a player, if he's not a legit guy, go get somebody else, and eventually you'll build your team to the point where you may not need a legit dude to carry this team. And I think the Titans are headed in that direction. Listen to Tyler Rowland talk about the excitement of having a new GM.
The Tennessee Titans have made their decision at general manager, and it is a fantastic choice. Mike Borgonzi, assistant general manager from the Kansas City Chiefs, is the pick. Now, there are some things that still need to be ironed out with the contract and all of that, but it appears that Borgonzi will be the next Tennessee Titans general manager. And look, I know that there's going to be skepticism with no matter what the Titans do right now. They've had a few years of bad decisions and bad football teams, quite honestly. But the Titans had great process going through all of these interviews with general manager candidates. Not only that, but they hire one of the most well-respected guys in the NFL, 16 years with the Kansas City Chiefs, has been a director of player personnel, has been a director of football operations, has been a scout as well, which is the background the Tennessee Titans were looking for. Borgonzi has been a part of some of the best teams in Kansas City Chiefs history, and now he'll be tasked with changing the Tennessee Titans' future.
All right, so last year in the draft, the Tennessee Titans hit on J.C. Latham, and the one that excites scouts the most is Devontae, man. When they hit on big Devontae Sweat in the second round, that's what gets people excited because it's not as much of a given. All right, let me put the scouts hat on you real quick. If there's an elite player at the top, but he's not a quarterback, but you think the quarterback is a first-round guy that you can kind of build around without being specific about names, what does Matt Williamson do in that situation, knowing that you're probably 2 or 3 years away, well, at least 2 years away from really, really contending?
I lean towards making punting on quarterback. And the more I think about the quarterback position from a scout GM perspective, I don't need a leadoff walk. I don't even need a double. I mean, I got to swing for the fences. Especially in the AFC. If I'm going to have to beat Allen and Lamar and Burrow and Mahomes, and maybe my division doesn't look as scary, but my goal here is to win Super Bowls and get the Super Bowls. I think I'm waiting until next year and maybe even accumulating some picks somehow that I can be within striking distance. I probably will be anyways with a Levis or a Brissett or a Fields or, whoever you roll with this year. But if you see a difference maker, if that's Abdul Carter, if that's Hunter, I think you just take really good players at this point.
Yep.
Maybe roll a dice in the third round,
at some point,
right.
At some point, it's not about checking these boxes, even though checking those boxes is a part of it. It's not about checking those boxes as much as it is when you come out of that tunnel in the championship game. All right, I'm going to look at your first 6 people. And I'm not talking about the dudes that just get off the airplane. I'm talking about those dudes. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the TJ Watts, the Cam Haywards. I'm talking about those type players, the Minka Fitzpatricks for the team that you cover.
Right.
I want
Mahomes and Chris Jones and
that's
Kelsey.
Right. I want my guys to be. I want to look at. We got a shot. We got a chance because of them, and they make a difference. That's what a number 1 overall pick is supposed to give you, and hopefully. Well, the Jaguar fans don't want me to say this, but hopefully for the Titans, they make the right decision. All right, we'll talk more about this. We'll get to the 49ers a little bit and talk about why their window. I don't think their window is shutting as fast as a lot of people think. And I'll tell you the reason I think that and get Matt's opinion on it. And we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. I remember the excitement and energy of a playoff game I attended years and years ago, and I'm looking forward to making new memories this season. There's one more game to go, man, and it ain't too late for you to get your ticket because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting those tickets even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste all that time searching through thousands of tickets. Now, this works for not more than just football tickets, basketball tickets, baseball tickets, theater, monster trucks, comedy shows, whatever, all right? Make sure you head on over to Game Time and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. I'll spell it for you, LOCKED. NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What time is it? It is game time. Moving along here, Locked On NFL here on a Friday with Matt Williamson here in the barbershop with me, running it down about everybody's business. We're going to start with the San Francisco 49ers. I looked around and I said, okay, I don't see a familiar team. And I made an assessment earlier this year that Buffalo was going to have their window shut because of all of their change. And that was egg in my face. So I'm not going to make that same mistake. I'm going to tell you the San Francisco 49ers are not dead or done. I like the addition of Robert Saleh, but there's something else they did last year, even in a losing season. This is a clip from earlier this year. This is all the way back in September when teams broke camp and they had played a couple of weeks. I want you to hear Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker from Locked On 49ers. And this is why I'm going to tell you, I think they'll be all right.
I've really liked what I've seen from Malik Mustafa, the way he plays. Phenomenal, big hitter. I think it's pretty clear when you start to look ahead at this 49ers roster in 2025. They have some young players in the secondary that they're going to lean on to be the starters going forward.
I think the biggest person that was responsible for that interception was Ronaldo Green. And his coverage. He had really tight coverage on Tyler Lockett running a crosser, and that made Geno have to try to throw a perfect pass kind of over the top of the defensive back. It settled on him just a little bit, and that's why Mustafa was able to get the interception. So shout out to Ronaldo Green on that play. On the very next drive, he had a nice PBU. Obviously, later in the game, huge interception when they kind of had a little bit of momentum going. They got to stop against the 49ers. They had an opportunity to potentially drive down the field and actually take the lead. Watching him make that play right there in that key moment, I think that gives a young cornerback a lot of confidence.
So you look at the top free agents that are out there right now. You got Charvarius Ward, all right, and then you got the Hufanga kid that plays safety, who's a very good player who played at Stanford. And you go, they're not going to be able to re-sign those dudes. And then you look up and you remember they got Mustafa and they got Ronaldo Green last year. Day 2 picks. This is what it's all about, and this is why you can get ahead of it a little bit and say, oh, the 49ers will be fine letting those dudes go and that they can't pay them because they have young players who are already experienced. Matt, I think stuff like this is why teams that have been in that window for a while, when they start to lose players, they're able to still keep. Ricky Pearsall is going to come on a little bit and help that team, but with their wide receiver position. So this is why I think the 49ers are still a very, very dangerous team.
I agree. Now they have some things to work out. They're currently over the cap. There's a Purdy contract looming at some point. I assume that they will give it to him. I like their replacements in the secondary, as we led off with, but they don't have their usual hockey lines of defensive linemen that they usually have, and didn't get much out of Hargrave. They're going to release him, but that can be found. I mean, that's not the hardest thing out there. As you know, I do a podcast with BP, and he's been talking for a while now that he thinks McCaffrey's future is what they call that Debo role. He thinks he won't be a regular running back later in his career. He'll be a slot receiver. He'll get some carries. Debo probably won't be back. You can find a back. That's not a problem. They got a lot out of Pooney in his rookie year. I'd be concerned if Trent Williams hangs it up. He had some personal tragedy, and he's up in age, and I would be kind of shocked if he comes back. But in the end, that team's too good to have the 11th pick in the draft. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's kind of the bottom line,
and that's the exact point I'm making, because I'm looking up here, and I was just at the Senior Bowl, and I saw dudes like Shamar Stewart, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness. And I saw guys like Mike Green, and I'm thinking, if they want to get a dude that they can put on the other side of Nick Bosa and help him out, this is a chance for them to do it. The defensive line, the interior of the defensive line is loaded. Offensive line, lots of versatility at the Senior Bowl.
A lot.
Lots of guys that can help. And we just talked about immediate impact. We just talked about the immediate Jarrett Verse. All of these dudes that made immediate impact. You got guys playing in the Super Bowl this year that made immediate impact. And at the positions the 49ers need, it kind of lines up that it also happens to be the positions that are really full in the draft. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but they're sitting there at 11. What if that Boise State running back falls to him, and then they can start making that little move with
McCaffrey, right?
McCaffrey, right? Not needing a quarterback and being a team that's too good to be picking where they're actually picking. I'm telling you, man, this bodes really, really well for them, setting them up real well for the future.
Ayuk comes back. I mean, he was easily out of sight, out of mind. They had a really rough year in terms of injuries and luck, and they played so many games, and it took their toll on them. I do think they'll rebound strong, and their O-line could use some work, but Shanahan's scheme has gotten by with very average offensive linemen too. I mean, if they go get D linemen and give them that D, Shamar Stewart, like you said, and give them that D line coach, look out.
Yep, watch out. Somebody else that has to watch out is the Bucs, and I'm going to hit on this right at the end of this segment real quick. Third offensive coordinator in 3 years. That means you're doing something right offensively. You're doing something right with your quarterback. Nobody's going after guys that aren't putting up good numbers like Liam Cohen this year. Was Dave Canales, who I did see at the Senior Bowl. This past couple of days ago. I want you to hear what Locked On Bucs, my man Yarko and his guest. I want you to hear what they think about who might be the new OC this time in Tampa.
I think Nick Caley is the one that I would circle for now. And the only reason I say that is I love to go by where there's smoke, there's fire. And even before this job opened up, Nick Caley's name has been floated out there for a handful of positions. Seems to be a guy who's getting some positive praise behind the scenes. I will warn everybody that if we use the two previous searches as historical reference for what Tampa Bay does, they will interview double-digit candidates, and the winner of this search will likely be at the very end.
All right, Nick Caley, currently the tight ends coach for the Rams. Of course, we had to know that more of Sean McVay's guys are going to get robbed. Let me ask you this question. People always worry about, because I just went through this in Jacksonville. People say if you get a defensive-minded coach and you have success, you're going to lose your offense coordinator. Now you got to start all over again. Now, watch this. Starting all over means going to Los Angeles to get their tight ends coach or their wide receivers coach. You're using it as a coaching farm system, basically what people are doing, right? So I'm just thinking, if you get a defensive-minded coach, why don't you do what he does every year? Just have a whole bunch of guys behind the offensive coordinator. Say, hey, man, I want you to get me a quarterback's coach, a quality control guy, a receivers coach, and a tight ends coach, that if we lose you, I can elevate one of them. I mean, it's just, I don't understand why people don't
bring your buddies with you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like it's common sense that if McVay can continue to have guys that continue to get poached, well, why doesn't the guy who's a defensive coordinator have a whole bunch of guys who can get poached? Doesn't it make sense?
It does. It does. I mean, I think you really have to look ahead more than any time in NFL history in terms of who's my next OC. I mean, if you're a defensive-minded head coach, and I'm not fighting you one bit, Wig. I think that's a great way of looking at it. But it is hard to hit on 3 offensive coordinators in a row, and to the point where they're getting poached for head jobs after 1 year, So I would bet, and I know nothing about this tight end coach they're talking about, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's fine. I didn't know much about the other guys, but I doubt he's going to be a head coach a year from now. I mean, chances are he's not going to be as successful as the past 2 were.
Yeah, I mean, if they do that, then boy,
yeah,
I'm telling you, that'll be something else. Real quick, let me ask you while I got you here. I ain't gonna. Liam Cohen, what do you think about the hire here in Jacksonville for Liam Cohen, combined with the fact that Trent Baalke's no longer here and they're going to have a clean slate with a new GM?
I like it a lot, and you probably are aware of this, but I don't know that a lot of listeners are. I think the NFL values Trevor Lawrence much more than Joe average fan. I don't think that most people realize, you of course know it better than I do, what he's had to overcome at such an early age. And I really think that people are super excited to work with him and could be a top 5 type quarterback still. I mean, maybe that's a little ambitious, but I don't think that's insane. And I think we mentioned this last Friday. I've done so many shows, but I love that Cohen came in and started talking about linemen. I mean, exactly. Tampa really rebuilt their offensive line with Graham and flipping Wirfs to the left side. That's where you start. I mean, I don't want to hear about, I'm going to go get him the best receiver I can. Give me guards, give me tackles,
You got to insulate him. You got to protect him. Ain't no good if you ain't got no security force around it. All right, now, the big game is next week. We ain't going to preview it, but we will talk about role players, guys that have played big roles. And I'm going to bring up something about Jalen Hurts. And I'm going to compare him to some quarterbacks that have had a certain characteristic about them. I'll do that in the third and final segment here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, man. It's one more game left. I know, but you don't have to play football with Prize Picks, man. But the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded. Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on any of the player projections. You get 2 or more of them right, and you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes, he only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. You already got it, man. You know he's going to do that. So just pair that one with something else, and then you're cashing out. Check out all the promo tabs to tail any of the Super Bowl Sweet Millie winners, big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. I ain't joking. Download the app today and use Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NFL for $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, man. Third segment here on Locked On NFL. Let me do this real quick. I'm going to talk about some players that can play in the Super Bowl and have a huge impact and be bigger. Jalen Hurts. A lot of talk about Jalen Hurts. A lot of talk about game managers. A lot of talk about big guys. I think what happens is folks don't pay attention to history, right? So you have dudes like Lamar Jackson that a lot of people, and I don't agree with it, that says plays well all year and then getting these big games and he can't. They say it about Josh Allen. They used to say it about Peyton Manning. They said it about a bunch of people. There's another player, and this player, Matt, is a guy who isn't considered a great player, right? But for some reason, when he gets into these big moments, and I'm not talking about Trent Dilfer, with all due respect to him, he's a Super Bowl champion. I'm not talking about somebody who just sat there and was on the bus. They get in these big games and teams depend on them. And let me give you some examples. Some young people might not remember this. Jim Plunkett was best in the Super Bowls, won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders. And this is when he beat NFC teams, when AFC teams weren't winning Super Bowls, And not only him, but then you move up in history, Eli Manning.
That's a name that's come to mind to me.
Yeah, it's like Eli Manning did the exact same thing. It's like he played better in those big moments than he played in his entire career. Another name, Joe Flacco, did the exact same thing, was Super Bowl MVP, and wasn't great all the time, but for some reason had a little chip on his shoulder. And guess who else has done that, Matt? He didn't win. But I promise you, I was in Jamaica a few years ago when the Chiefs and Eagles played, and Chris Jones was on the defense, and Trent McDuffie, all of these dudes that the Chiefs have, and Spagnuolo was still right over there. And I watched Jalen Hurts almost in a loss become the MVP.
Yeah.
I think there are some guys that just have that trait where they play bigger than themselves in these big moments.
Great examples. I thought of Eli immediately. Like, I don't think Eli's a Hall of Famer, but I know he's going to go. And my logic is I never thought he was a top 5 quarterback, but when it mattered most, I can't deny it. There's no doubt about it. And those other examples are great too. And there's probably tons of them that we didn't even mention.
Nick Foles.
It's good too. Right.
Yep.
100%. And I do think there's something there for Hurts. I mean, I think in some ways, up until the NFC Championship game, they were winning despite him. Their big plays come in the run game. Their offense is structured different than any in the league. But he also played his best game in the biggest game. I thought he played his best game all year last week. And case in point, you know what I mean? And if he can play like that, that offense is as unstoppable as any in the league.
There's somebody who's looking real good right now. And even in the game when Nick Foles played, we just mentioned him. Zach Ertz was huge in that game when they beat Belichick and Brady for the Super Bowl. Listen to who I think might have an impact, and I'll get your opinion on it.
That Saints game showed me Dallas Goedert was ready to blow up. And the playoffs have kind of confirmed that for me. So his playoff numbers, I saw this on PFF today, 16 receptions, 206 yards in 3 games, 148 yards after the catch, 5 receptions of 15-plus yards, 0 drops. This year's Dallas Goedert on another level, but 2017 Zach Ertz, one of the best route runners in football. I mean, just look what he did to Harrison Smith in the NFC title. In the Super Bowl, he's got the 2 biggest plays of the game, the 4th and 1 conversion in the 4th quarter with the game on the line, and then the game-winning touchdown on the left side of the field, that beautiful in-cut. I mean, Zach Ertz in 2017, I can't leave him off the list. So it was close.
So this is for all those people with those parlays, those FanDuel or those Prize Picks parlays, man. I'm giving you a little bit of a hint. He has a little bit of extra hitch in his giddy up right now. And with all of the attention on Kelsey for the other side, and with the attention that's been given to tight ends who actually didn't catch the ball the last 2 weeks, I think Dallas Goedert is setting up to be maybe one of the big keys in this game.
I love it. And coincidentally, Ertz is coming off a huge game for Washington against Philly. So these guys still are hanging around. And I'm with I think Goddard took a huge step forward this year, but they're not a high pass volume team. He missed some time with injury. So maybe his fantasy owners weren't thrilled with him and, doesn't get the credit he deserves. But man, I think he's a top 5 type tight end, and he's going to be really hard to deal with because obviously goal number 1 is Barkley, then just kind of shutting down the ground game with Hurts, and then you got to deal with Brown and Smith. I mean, so he's in a really advantageous situation too.
There you go, man. Matt Williamson is always here on a Friday on Locked On NFL. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL each and every day, a double dose, because Tyler Rowland will come on in the morning and hit you with a double shot of espresso. He's going to wake you right on up. He's got the voice to do it. And then you come by here to the barbershop. And you know how we do it, man. We lay it down and lay it back and just talk about a little bit of everything. All right, Matt, have a good weekend. Enjoy your weekend, you and your family. Blessed to y'all, man. And I'm glad everything is good with you. And we'll be back next week with the Super Bowl preview with Matt and I on Friday. Matt's the last person I'm going to talk to on Locked On NFL before the big game. All right, until then, you guys take care of yourself. Enjoy. Thank you for joining us again here on Locked On NFL.